Welcome to another epic Boss Books Masterclass. I'm your host, Emily Bauman, and of course, boss means being of sacred service. So today's masterclass is going to be one of the most important you can possibly listen to. It can make or break your entire book and author journey because we are talking about your first chapter. That's right, chapter number one. This is what all agents, publishers, people in the industry are going to request to read chapter one for sure, possibly the first three chapters as they assess your manuscript. And if you're self-publishing like me or using a hybrid publisher like Boss Books, you can always count on your Amazon clients to read through the first preview pages on Amazon, which is almost the first chapter sometimes. And that helps them decide whether or not they're going to buy your book. Okay, let's dive right in because I have 7 steps, 7 key things for you to look for. And this is like your checklist. And by the end of this masterclass, you are going to be empowered to write a compelling and irresistible first chapter. Are you ready? Grab your notebook, grab your first juice of the day or your last coffee or whatever is in between, your matcha. We're going to dive right in. Here is how to write a great first chapter, your essential checklist in 7 steps. We talked about the challenge, why it can feel so hard, and why it's essential, because so many people are going to make decisions based on this moment, right? Our opening pages determine whether readers stay with us or not. So you need to answer the question, why should a reader care? Why does it matter? Why are they going to keep reading? And the answer is all about creating connection and transformation. Transformation for you as the person in the book, of course, but also by the end of reading your story, the person reading is going to feel transformed as well. And that is the power of a good memoir, good storytelling. So here's what we're going to cover. We're going to ground the reader in time and place. Number two, introducing yourself in a compelling way. We're going to talk about how to establish your memoir's theme and then emotional arc, set up the core conflict or challenge. Yes, all of this in chapter one, using your voice and tone to draw readers in. And seven, we're going to include an emotional hook that keeps them turning pages from the start. So, from the very beginning, we need the reader to know where they are in the world and when. Memoir is rooted in real experiences. Instead of over explaining where you are, you want to let them experience in the world by you immersing them in the scene from your perspective. And the best way to do this is to use physical action, like you sitting at a table or you walking through a park and describing the scene rather than just saying this and this and this has happened. For example, instead of saying I was in my childhood home, you would say I traced the cracks in the kitchen table, remembering the nights I spent doing homework there under my mother's watchful eye. You see the difference? You're showing, not telling. So it's not wrong to use an exact date and time at the top of a chapter. You could say Tokyo 1988. I ran through the candy shop and was immersed in bubbles and you can describe the scene and say where you are in the world. Nothing wrong with that. The most important thing is to really help the reader know. And you can use interesting things. Is someone on a flip phone? Then they know they're in the 80s and 90s. Was someone sending a fax? All of these are little clues that help people really orient themselves in time and space. Next, you're going to want to introduce yourself as a protagonist. The reader needs someone to care about or to hate, to follow, to despise, to cheer for, and that's you. So the first step is really accepting that you are going to be the star of the show. It can be uncomfortable for some, others not so challenging. And here it is. You have to make yourself likable out of the gate, or at least compelling. And I suggest you do one of these things or a combination of them. You can take action, right? Doing anything, not just being passive. Passive, no, no one's going to care. If you're being treated unjustly, that's a really compelling way for people to start caring about you. Show competence. Maybe we're at a science fair. All the other kids are way taller and older, and you're a genius. We love a good, childhood genius story. So show competence at anything, and people are likely to care and have a more buy-in attitude from the very beginning. Have friends. So if you describe yourself in the opening scene as having friends, something interesting happens. Even as a reader, the mirror neurons fire. Those tiny little, oh, if they can, I can. If they have friends in the book and people like them in the book, I might like them too. It actually happens physiologically in our bodies as readers. So write that into your story. Write yourself as having friends. Show yourself in dialogue with them. In the first scene, you're going to have people wanting to know what happens next. Think about so many successful books and trilogies where it's a team of people, right? Everyone from Scooby-Doo to Stranger Things. It's a crew, and we love a crew. Maybe you do a good deed, or maybe you have a quirk. And it can be anything from like a funky hairstyle to maybe you do something strange every day before you go to school. And that brings us to number, I guess, 7 or 8. You can reveal a secret vulnerability. Reveal something to the reader that most people don't know about. Okay? All these things are entry points for people to care about you. Be invested in your success. So remember, you're the main character, but which version of you are we talking about? This is super, super important. Readers need to connect with your past self, both emotionally and psychologically. So it can't just be you giving a bunch of wisdom from your now perspective. It can be tempting because we don't want people to think we're idiots or that we haven't learned the lesson, but just give your ego a little pep talk and say, by the end, they're going to understand where I arrived. But give them the opportunity to meet you as you were, flawed, selfish, maybe a klepto, maybe you were stealing candy bars from the corner store. Whatever it is, let us see you then. Let us see your inner dialogue, your thoughts then. Even if you're contradictory and messy, even if you have strengths that you don't even really know are strengths, do it in a way that brings you into the moment and then we'll be in the moment with you as readers. So some ways that I like to invite people to do this, get into your former self, is look at pictures of you. Photos are transmissions, right? So look at a picture of yourself at the age you're writing about. Look at the clothing that you wear. Imagine how cool you felt or how ashamed you felt of your clothing. Okay, so that's one in. Another example is making sure that you are showing yourself and not telling yourself. That's the golden rule, and I'll say it over and over again. Show, don't tell. So, for example, instead of saying, I was painfully shy as a child, you don't say, I was shy. That's just telling. Show us. Say, I avoided eye contact as I stepped onto the school bus, gripping my backpack like a life raft. Or I shrunk into the shadows and always sat in the back of the room with my hood up if the teacher would let me get away with it. Stuff like that, so we can see you in the scene. Let us see you walking through life. And then we're going to get this feeling of being immersed in your world and we're going to care about what happens next. Number 3, you want to establish the memoir's theme and emotional arc. Now, don't get intimidated by words like emotional arc and themes. It's not complicated. What makes emotional stakes really gripping are emotions like grief, resilience, self-discovery, healing. These are all written into your story for sure. If you're feeling called to write a memoir, I know that you have some powerful themes because memoir isn't about meaning, or memoir isn't about just memory, it's about meaning. I said that backwards. It's all about what we gather from the experiences. So here are some questions to ask yourself. What central emotional conflict drives my story? And what's the deeper message behind this first chapter? What are people probably going to get from this? So set those emotional stakes high. Show yourself in a state of grief. Show yourself overcoming something. Show yourself having an early aha moment, but from the perspective of who you were then. That's key. Number 4, we want to set the tone and the voice. This is more about who you were then versus now. So again, you want to show a tone, whether it's humorous, whether it's sassy. Were you a very sassy child or sassy in your 20s? Were you brazen? Were you rude? Did you speak in short sentences? Were you very funny? Were you trying to hide your grief and sadness and insecurity with humor? Then make it humorous, make it snappy. Be true to you and then carry that tone throughout. Okay, be consistent in the tone that reflects who you were. And maybe now you're loving in your word choice, but that's not who you were then. So allow it to be real. And again, showing, not telling. Before, I was sad that my marriage was ending. So that's an example of how we would tell very straight up. I was sad that my marriage was ending. And then the tone is grief, right? So the tone is contemplative. So after a little word makeover, we would say, I sat in the lawyer's office, twisting my wedding ring, wondering how his signature could erase 12 years of love. So what's powerful about this is that we're seeing the act of twisting the symbol of union. So she chose the symbol of the wedding ring and she's twisting it around, knowing it's going to be taken off soon, but we're not there yet. Okay, so there's a lot of grief there, there's a lot of contemplation, there's rumination. You wouldn't have that if it was a 12-year-old. This is someone who's had 12 years of marriage. So this is deep and introspective. And that's the tone, deep introspection, inner conflict, inner turmoil that would characterize the memoir. Some memoirs are hilarious, and it sounds like the person is on acid writing them. Okay. Jim Carrey's memoir is a riot and it's psychedelic in word format. Tom Robbins is the same. Choose your tone and stick with it. Let the readers know who you were and let them in on your inner dialogue. Next, we need to set up the core conflict. Yes, your story has a conflict. What creates tension right out of the gate? Conflict. Emotional, internal struggles, challenges on the outside, or both. So your first chapter should at least hint at a central conflict. Maybe you're kind of dealing with bad relationships, one after the other, and you're always making these poor relationship choices because you don't deeply love yourself and you have a fear of abandonment because one of your parents left. You know, that could be a central theme. Or if your memoir is about overcoming childhood trauma, your opening scene could show a moment of powerlessness or resilience in youth and creative ways that you overcame some of those terrible experiences. So ask yourself two things. Number one, what challenge defines my story's journey? And number two, how can I hint at this conflict in the very first chapter? And maybe there's multiple. Choose the one that lights you up the most or has the most emotional weight. Then you would like to please create an emotional hook. And what that means is a moment that you invite them into. This is another way of discussing what we're talking about already. Your reader needs to feel emotionally invested in the first few pages. So we want to use a lot of sensory details to create a visceral experience. Think about taste, touch, sight, sound, intuition, all of it. What are they hearing? Is there a song on that's like a flashback? You know, are you in a club scene? What music is playing? Put some of the lyrics in the book. Let the reader in with this visceral experience. And the other thing that I like to talk about here is starting with a question or a mystery. This is a great way to create unresolved tension. For example, the phone rang. I already knew what they were going to say, but I wasn't ready to hear it. Why not? Who's calling? What's happening? You know, bring us into this moment of tension with an emotion like, dread. Oh no, unease. And then the reader's going to be like, I need to know, what are they talking about? So how can you create that kind of mystery from the very beginning? Your first pages, like I said, make or break your book. So there could be moments in the first chapter that include loss, like a death, breakup, failure, we just talked about, a divorce. Could have a realization, like a truth you can no longer ignore, a transformation and the start of a change. It could be you leaving your hometown for the very first time, or breaking up with someone that represents old patterns and habits that you're no longer willing to tolerate and setting out on a new path, or something tragic that happened. Like, here's an example. The night my mother disappeared, I was 7 years old and I thought it was my fault. So there we have tension of emotional anguish and wanting to know why. Why would the protagonist think it was their fault? Okay, so think about your own story now. Start to think about ways that you can take your existing story and frame it in this way. Sometimes it's only a change in a sentence that makes a massive difference. And here's a pro tip. Never say, I realized that. When we say, I realized that, it's too obvious. It's spoon feeding. The solution is easy, of course. Oftentimes, we can simply remove the phrase, I realized that, and leave what came after. So, if you're going through a breakup, you could say, oh, I realized that my boyfriend actually never listened to me or cared about my opinions. And instead of saying, I realized that, you could say, I walked through the door, looked at his face. My boyfriend never cared about me or listened to me or cared about my opinions. He was doing the same thing, watching TV, didn't even look up when I entered the room, right? So just giving context. I hope this makes sense. I hope this is landing. Small tweaks make big differences in your opening chapter. So maybe you're like, Emily, I have a prologue. I have a whole first story that I wrote, or I have a long introduction. That's okay. The prologue sets a stage, but it should still have an emotional hook. So maybe your prologue is written from who you are now, and it's like the wise one saying what this is going to be about. I would actually change that to be an introduction. And we have a whole other masterclass about the difference between an introduction, a prologue, and also how to use an epilogue as well. So that's a story for another day. Right now, I'm interested in you applying this because you are a boss, a being of sacred service. You're going to have a best-selling book because you're part of Boss Books, or I hope you are. And here's a checklist. Is your reader grounded immediately in the time and place? Or do you leave them wandering and worrying and thinking about where they are? Don't let them search, just immediately let them know where they are. Second, have you introduced yourself, this past version of you, in a compelling way? Have you established your memoir's theme and emotional arc? Have you set up core conflict? Or have you shown the challenge, whether it's an internal or an external challenge? Have you used voice and tone to draw the reader in, really showing them who you were, really demonstrating? And have you included an emotional hook that keeps them turning pages? Thank you so much for going on this mini journey with me. It is one of those really activating experiences, right? To write the first chapter and to do it well, because it has to start out messy, it has to start out flawed, and not all of us are so comfortable writing flawed things, but let it be what it is and come back and edit with this checklist in mind. I am cheering for you, I am rooting for you, and you can always let me know which of these was hard, challenging, or easy in our comment section inside of school in our community. I love you. I am so excited to see how this supports you, and I'll see you in the next masterclass. Bye for now. Your book doula over and out.